Good day, everyone, and welcome to the 7th installment of FNA's Suptech broadcast series. Before we begin, let me provide some quick housekeeping remarks. So this broadcast follows a 60-minute format. Roughly 45 minutes of that will be spent talking with our guests, and then we'll have a 15-minute Q&A at the end. If you'd like to ask a question, as many people do, please don't use the chat option, as that makes it harder to track your question. Instead, use the Q&A widget also at the bottom, and then our guests will aim to answer as many questions as they can during the Q&A at the end of the session. For those of you who aren't familiar with FNA, which stands, by the way, for Financial Network Analytics, we are an advanced analytics and simulation technology company. We work across 4 core sectors, namely central banks, commercial banks, financial market infrastructures, or FMIs, and national security. Our software is tailored as solutions to each sector. So where a central bank might use our technology for RTGS stress testing, a commercial bank will use the same underlying tech to optimize their liquidity usage. We're very active as a company in the Suptech space. This slide here very briefly explains our core collaboration areas with central banks and other financial authorities. I'll just leave that up for a second. So the key areas that we're focusing on are loan data analytics. Some of you might know the European Central Bank's ANA credit, RTGS stress testing, which is a core capability that we've had for many years, and also payment behavior monitoring, which can be based on RTGS payments, but also other payments from other payment systems. So let's go back to today's discussion. We'll delve into the critical topic of cybersecurity and digital resilience in the financial sector, with a particular focus on the EU frameworks DORA and NIS2. And we're joined today by Wiebe Ruttenberg, who is the Director of Strategy at SecAlliance, and Manit Sahib, who is the Director of Global Intelligence and Offensive Operations at Picnic Corporation. Both our speakers have a background, like me, in central banking. Manit has been at the Bank of England for several years, and Wiebe has been at the European Central Bank for several years. So let me set the stage for today's discussion. We are in an era of rapidly evolving technology and ever-increasing cyber threats. We have been in that era for a while. So the need to strengthen our defenses and ensure the resilience of financial institutions is pressing. Such initiatives require regulatory authorities, supervisory agencies, and financial entities to proactively address cybersecurity risks and adopt robust measures to protect the integrity of our financial system. So let me turn to the speakers, and let me start with you, Wiebe. Could you provide some insights into your current role and what work you do?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Thomas. After I've left the European Central Bank and after having spent some time in my garden, as was required, I joined SecAlliance now, I think 2 years ago. And SecAlliance is in fact doing two things. It's first of all, it's a cyber threat intelligence company. So really monitoring the threats, cyber threats, which are out there, and informing our clients about those threats. We do it. In fact, what we do are 2 elements. We create awareness, so we make our clients aware. And by the way, those clients are in fact the same client base as you have. So banks, commercial banks, central banks, financial market infrastructures, but also other critical entities, for example, the telecom domain or the energy domain. In fact, clients, entities which are active in say sectors of high social relevance. That's our client base. So we make them aware of the threats they face, and of course what they can do about. But the other thing on top on creating awareness is that we facilitate collaboration. Facilitating collaboration between peer organizations, so banks within a certain country, financial market infrastructures in a certain region or pan-European level, but also, for example, if you have a big corporate organization, a cooperation between the different, say, subsidiaries of such an organization, and facilitating collaboration in the way, making each other aware of threats, helping each other in addressing those threats, and explaining each other, okay, what say the best practices they can follow, because that I think is extremely needed, and we will come back on that point later in the discussion.
We will, exactly. So let me ask you the same question, Manit. What is your current role and what work do you do?
Yeah, hi everyone. So former head of penetration testing and red team at the Bank of England. So at the Bank of England, I used offensive techniques to protect the UK's payment and gold systems. So I'm now the Director of Global Intelligence and Offensive Operations at Picnic Corporation. So the company aims to protect against social engineering and initial access attacks, and help build cyber resilience through sophisticated security testing, the likes of red teaming, purple teaming, and social engineering assessments.
Thank you, Manit. Well, let me go back to you, Wiebe. So today's topic: what steps do regulatory authorities and supervisory agencies need to take to ensure compliance with the new requirements set by DORA and NIS2?
Yes, that's a nice question, Thomas. Thanks. Of course, there's a risk that you go into too much detail here. But first, I think the Digital Operation Resilience Act is probably most of the people know, but has entered into force by January this year, and this fact is finally bringing together a lot of ICT security requirements and more, which were before that, I think, in more than 10 different pan-European regulations, directives, etc. DORA is really addressing the full financial sector, not only the banks or not only insurance companies. So in that way, I think it's a key piece of legislation with very say healthy thoughts and requirements which are in there. Having said that, of course, if you have such a regulation now in place, the regulatory technical standards needs to be developed, and that's the first key thing which needs to be done, of course, by the supervisor to start drafting, say, the more detailed requirements which financial entities needs to follow, because these needs to be implemented by January 25, needs to be ready by mid 24, implementation by January 25, and I think there's the big challenge, because as I understand the audience today, many central banks and supervisors are probably attending, and having been one of them myself for many years, the key risk, of course, is that we start reinventing the wheel again. And so I think the key element here is that when the supervisors start drafting the regulatory technical standards, please have a look what is already out there. Don't invent the wheel for a second time. Don't try to say go for the last millimeter in perfectionism, but look what is out there and what you can learn from. And just to repeat or to reiterate what also the European Central Bank has delivered over the last years is, of course, is testing frameworks, cyber resilience oversight expectations, and these are in fact requirements on the basis of which DORA is based, has been drafted. So I think that's a key thing. Another one, which is, I think, quite fascinating, that is that cyber resilience and ensuring cyber resilience of a financial entity is not about compliance. And I would say, please, also supervisors, do not fall in the trap of checking compliance and pushing for compliance. Of course, it's about compliance, but it's more than that. It's also about a culture change. Because with the ever-evolving cyber threats we see, we envisage, and the financial entities experience, you just have to evolve, to learn and evolve, and to become better. And by just a compliance exercise, by following a checklist, you will never reach that say optimum of cyber resilience. And that also requires, I think, a culture change on the supervisory side, move away from pure supervision and compliance, and move as authority more into the direction of catalyst and facilitate change in the market, in the entity you supervise, by just helping an organization to learn and evolve. And there you enter into the domain of testing, of information sharing, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's often an underestimated element of, say, implementing a key piece of legislation like DORA, that it's not only about compliance, but it's definitely also about a different culture in the relationship between the supervisor and the supervised entity.
Oh, thanks, Wiebe. Manit, given your knowledge of DORA and also NIS2, how do they compare to other initiatives around the world? Are there any notable differences or perhaps areas where they align?
Yeah, so under DORA, EU financial entities have to ensure that they withstand, respond, recover from all types of IT disruptions, as well as prevent and mitigate cyber threats. So similar global frameworks to DORA include NIST, which is US-based, and also Singapore's MAS TRM. So NIST is currently the most widely used framework in the cybersecurity industry. And the key difference between DORA and NIST is that DORA is broken down into 5 pillars based on roles. So if you look at the roles and the pillars, it has risk management, incident management, resilience testing, third-party management, and information sharing. Whereas NIST has a slightly different approach, and it's broken down by functions. So identity, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So whilst they cover the same areas, mapping controls across both frameworks, especially for cross-jurisdictional entities, could be challenging. Personally, I like the role-based approach that DORA has gone for. It allows easier segregation for roles and responsibilities based on how security teams are formed in financial services. So they're broken down by like third-party risk management, or the resilience testing and vulnerability management testing, whereas NIST, has multiple roles per each function. Going into more depth about similarities, one of DORA's pillars addresses resilience testing, and this is already conducted in the EU as part of the TIBA assessment. So for those who don't know, TIBA is a threat intelligence-led penetration test, which is used to simulate a cyber attack to understand the detection and response capabilities of the entity. So DORA is an extension to TIBA and a more comprehensive framework, which brings all the elements, including third-party risk, together to improve cyber resilience.
Yeah, and then again, if I may add to that, that's really the key thing of DORA is that it's really about learning from those tests. So TIBA is explicitly mentioned in DORA, but it's about the testing and not to comply that you show, okay, I'm fully safe, because nobody's fully safe in the field of cyber, but that you really get the chance to learn from the results of such a test. And that's also the same with information sharing in DORA, which is also, I think, quite a novelty that's so explicit, that so you are able to learn from others, from the mistakes of others, from the bad dreams of others, and so you're able to share your worst nightmares. And in that way, DORA has been inspired by other initiatives around the world, but I think DORA in itself, as it is now, I think really should be a piece of inspiration for others also.